And it's really good. It's really good. But the site is called Nubia. You got to go to a site called Narrative with a K to get to the site Nubia with a K.
Yeah.
But it's all black, you know what I mean?
Okay. I think it's 15 after. We'll go ahead and get the pledge. We'll open up with the pledge. Then we'll get started for tonight's meeting. Well, hold on. I just started the recording. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Tonight is December 19th, 2023. It's Tuesday. It's 8:15 p.m. Tonight will be session 13 of our officers training for UNIA-ACL Division 421. Tonight we'll be going over the questions from lesson 11 titled Man, and we'll be doing a reading for lesson 12 titled The Purpose of Institutions. So to officially open our meetings, we have the pledge to the UNIA flag. If you would, please come up, put your black fist in the air, repeat after me, or say along with me. I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the
Mind, and spirit,
the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of
Mother Africa
and the liberation
of her scattered black children.
I accept
for myself and
my descendants
teachings of
the teachings of universal African nationalism.
I promise
that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
So all black
people are free and united
through one God,
one aim, and one destiny.
Race first. Okay. Has everyone? Well, I think Attorney Imhotep, you're the only one. Attorney Imhotep, you're the only one that has not recited the oath, to my knowledge. Attorney Imhotep, are you able to read this or do?
Well, it is blocked off here. It's large. It's large enough to read, but it's not fully visible because of the names, the participants here.
Do me a favor and hit there's a small line on the, it should be a fourth to the left, or the first of four icons at the top of that box. That'll minimize the images.
Should view. Okay. And you said minimize or something?
It should be a small bar, horizontal bar. That's the first of four icons at the top of that black box with the images. And that'll allow you to minimize that box to remove the images.
Ooh. Okay.
Not working.
I think so here. It's a little challenge here. Let me work on it for maybe hopefully next meeting or something.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Someone there? Yes, somebody had something.
You want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. I, Diane Marshall, do solemnly swear before Almighty God that I have entered upon the instructions of African School of Philosophy conducted by Marcus Garvey, for no other purpose than to serve the Negro race through the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, of which he is President General, that I shall not use the knowledge so gained to promote or advance the interests of any other organization. I shall confine myself always to serve the Universal Negro Improvement Association and work within the framework of the organization for any promotion I may desire for the improvement of my race. I shall never divulge or reveal any of these lessons I received to anyone, and shall never allow the lessons recorded thereof to fall into the hands of anyone, and shall safeguard the same with my life from falling into the hands of other races. I shall always use all my energy and ability to advance the interests of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and shall never be in rebellion against. And to this I swear myself my honor, my sacred trust, and shall I fail this oath, may I can't really see, that's covered up, may the just reward be meted out to me, so help me God.
Excellent job, Vice First.
Thank you, Vice First.
Yeah. We're gonna do a quick review. This must be the wrong presentation. Okay. I want to talk about lessons 1 through the first lessons. What was the name of the first lesson? What do we remember from it? What's the takeaway? Try not to
The
use
first one? Wow, that's going way back.
Yeah, we crossing the threshold of halfway. This is a perfect time for a thorough review.
You mean the preface and stuff, or past?
No, lesson 1, the actual lesson.
Okay, intelligence, education, universal knowledge, and how to get it.
What was the takeaway for that lesson? In a sentence or two, what was the directive for us?
Never to stop learning.
Never stop learning. So, Lady President is trying to say the value of knowledge is to use it. So, all right,
right.
Yeah. Stop learning, never stop reading. Value of knowledge is to use it. Specifically, history of man. Garvey says we can always find examples of respect in the Black race in the Bible and throughout history, the history of man. Lesson 2. What was lesson 2? What was it titled? What was the takeaway?
Leadership.
Oh, I'm still sharing that. Oh my gosh, that was terrible. I was sharing the wrong thing. Leadership. What was the takeaway for leadership for us as Garveyites as officers in the UNIA. Never marry a poor white. Yes, that is true. That was a unforgivable sin for leadership. Eat eggs. That wasn't leadership. That wasn't leadership.
That was elocution.
Yes, that was elocution. Lesson 2. What we get from lesson 2? Leadership. That's an important lesson.
Your heart and your head must work together.
On your head must be in a line. We must always be superior. And I've referenced that to lesson 1, superior intellect. But he says as soon as we lose the position of superiority, people will no longer follow you and you'll have to follow someone else. And also characteristics of leadership, confidence, personality, being clean, presentable, charismatic. So leadership. What was lesson 3? What's the takeaway from lesson 3? Aims and objects. What's the takeaway from there?
Goals and duties.
Purpose as a race, goals and duties.
Charity begins at home.
Charity begins at home. That was the second half where we was talking about nation, I believe.
Never deny help to your own race.
Yes. But yes, the principles of the organization: universal confraternity, pride and love, assist the needy, reclaim the fallen, rebuilding Africa, independent Negro nations and communities, ambassadors and representatives to protect us in each of our communities, conscientious spiritual worship, education, institutions. We have to teach ourselves and we have to remind our children of to have pride and respect for themselves. Number 10, global economy. African economy should be the strongest economy, and we should, we shouldn't really need the help of any others. We should tap into our African economy first. And then number 11 is do everything in our power to help our people to benefit any conditions. So aims and objects, there's a principles. That's what the organization stands for. The second half of it talked about nationhood, talked about our one aim. It said that our aim is to have a sovereign nation on the continent of Africa. So establishing our foundation. We've got intelligence, we got leadership, and now we get to the principles of the organization. Number 4, what's number 4? I see the chat. Okay, number 4. What was lesson 4? Elocution. What's the takeaway from elocution other than eat eggs?
how we present ourselves when we're speaking to people.
How you present?
Drink water.
Drink water as well. But communication, if you have a tale to tell, tell it well. So once we get our head and our heart in alignment, it's time to activate, our God-given vocal cords and express, that passion that we have and that level of knowledge that we have combined. So elocution, as Garvey says, the pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than them both combined. Okay, number 5. What's lesson 5? God. What's the takeaway from God from lesson 5? We got intelligence, leadership, principles of the organization, how to speak well, and now lesson titled God. What's the takeaway from lesson on God?
Man never dies.
Man never dies. What's he saying? What should we remember from that lesson?
That there's a transformation from one form to the other.
Yes, nothing ever dies. We should not fear death. It's a process In order for us to be here, others had to die. So we should, understand that we're going to have to transition for the future generation to survive. And as he said, quote unquote, eat off of us. Questions, comments so far? Lessons 1 through 5. And again, let me see. I don't think I said this, so y'all getting some extra today. Is this in here? Might not be in here. There it is. Okay. This is from some years of study. But you said it's blurry. Yes. So lessons 1 through 7, intelligence to character. I haven't checked on this. I think I created this last year. I hadn't, but I can, freestyle it today. Individual development, knowledge of self, history. Goal is to be good representatives of ourself and of the race. Understanding of life and death, striving to achieve the highest level of individual divinity. So let me see. We did God. Lesson 6, Christ. What was the takeaway from Christ? Christ, lesson 6. We did a whole lesson, spent the whole week on it. What was the takeaway? Lesson 6, philosophy. Not philosophy. Course of African philosophy. This is the foundation, part of the foundation. Lesson 6, what's the takeaway?
About righteousness and doing what is right.
About righteousness and doing what is right, yes. But it's something more fundamental that I'm looking for. Lesson on Christ. What was Garvey trying to communicate there? Huh? Lady President said, how is important that we study, read the Bible? I don't think he used the word Bible in lesson 5.
But we should keep in communion with God.
Keep in communion with God. Oh, and it's lesson 6. I'm sorry. Yes, for what purpose? What are we trying to, what?
To save our soul.
To save our soul.
We should worship with our heart, soul, and mind.
What was Christ's life meant to show us or be? Martyr? Not exactly. It was. He didn't use that word. It was a word he used in the text.
We all have Christ within us.
We all have Christ within us. Yes. Okay, y'all playing. So we're gonna have to go.
Basically, not to rebel against the Holy Spirit of God that is in man.
Yes, but yes. I don't know which lesson it was. One lesson talked about the Holy Spirit of God and the free will of man, and having those two in line is how we are in line with God's will. And when we're against it, we're in rebellion. Christ's life was supposed to be exemplary. That's the word that I was looking for. As I just read in the summary, striving to achieve the highest level of individual divinity. That's specifically what lesson 6 is about. It's saying that Christ was that example of our highest level of spiritual divinity. If we ever want to have some level of eye to eye, face to face, well, eye to eye with God as close to possible to be, Christ is the best example that we have to achieve that, following the behavior that he set forth in regards to prayer, obedience, and so forth. But the example, that's lesson 6. Questions, comments? All right, lesson 7 is character. What's takeaway for character? What do y'all have for character? As simple as you could put it. How to present yourself as a UNIA?
That with self-control, you can conquer any bad habit.
Self-control, you can conquer any bad habit, yes.
Be clean.
Eat clean or be clean?
I said be clean.
Be clean. Character is the fundamental requirements. So if we're not able or we don't see the purpose in this lesson 6, it's like, oh, that's too much. It's unnecessary. At the bare minimum, we must maintain good character. So even if we don't want to, be quote unquote God on earth, or portray a level of divinity in relationship with obedience and prayer, so forth, then we at the very least need to be clean and present ourselves as clean. But again, phase 1, lessons 1 through 7, we didn't talk about anybody else. These lessons were about ourselves. So individual development, knowledge of self. We should know our history, know the history of man, know, as Garvey said, ethnology, the history of our ethnicity. Goal is to be a good representative of ourselves and of the race. So Lady President said of the representative of the UNIA, but in more principle and more general, just a representative of the race, so that people that see us from 100 yards away may not see the red, black, and green pin on our jacket, but they know that we're melanated individuals. They see dreads from behind you, they know that you're a melanated individual. So just off of that, we should display the highest level of character development and spiritual development that we know of as a people, and us being the first men and women, we should have the best examples of that. So that's lesson 1. I mean, that's phase 1, as I explain it, which takes us into phase 2. And again, all of these lessons are built off of each other. So if we haven't mastered lessons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then we shouldn't be trying to apply lessons 9, 10, 11, 12. We need to go back to the drawing board, go back to phase 1, and make sure we have a serious level of understanding and mastery of those phases, because that's really mastery of self, before we start to go into phase 2, which is creating a community. I'll say community development, knowledge of nation and state, historical record of man. So as we just read in lesson 11, it's the historical record of man. Goal is to understand how societies work and the components of a society. Understanding how individuals contribute to society, striving to achieve a society of universal thinkers with self-initiative. So self-initiative is lesson 14. We haven't gotten there. We're going to read lesson 12 tonight. But in essence, once we have gotten a level of development for ourselves, and we can look in the mirror and we can kind of self-check, self-regulate, then we need to start building our communities, and we build those communities from like-minded individuals. So got a brief, and not an animation, but graphic. Yeah. So as I said, lessons 1 through 7 is really about us. It's really about you. It's about me. It's us in the mirror. It's shadow boxing. But you are your biggest enemy, and you should understand that you are the biggest project of development in your life. You are the biggest focus in your life. I think one of the lessons says, man is responsible to God for no one but himself. So you are your biggest responsibility. Lesson 8 is the social system. So in lesson 8, we should understand what it is to create a society. Anybody remember some takeaways from lesson 8? Social system. I only remember one. That's like the first one. Yes, society is an organization of mankind to safeguard and protect its own interest.
When you riot against the government, you riot against yourself.
Right. Understanding that you are an individual in this quote unquote society. And when you fight against it, you're fighting against yourself. But the takeaway we should have is, as leaders and as officers in the UNIA, is we are beginning to create our own society. And from my studies of the course of African philosophy, we have to imagine and envision a society that has mastered lessons 1 through 7. And that's what we exemplify, and that is what we teach. And when it comes to like-minded individuals, that's the basis of our society. Questions, comments? Okay. And the next lesson, diplomacy, and I'll talk about economy and man. I'll touch on institutions as well. Before I think I'll wait on that. Diplomacy. Anybody remember what diplomacy was about?
They're saying that diplomacy is the way that governments deal with each other.
Yes, pretty much. A peculiar relationship between nations. This is where we kind of get into morally a scamp, I believe, where we get into politics, where we get into diplomacy. But again, we are at this point, we're becoming representatives of our society. We've developed lessons 1 through 7. We teach lessons 1 through 7 within our own group, within our own club, community, or institution. And then we use lesson 9 to interact with other societies. So the way I had it here, this big blue bubble would be the nation that we're in, the United States. This yellow circle would be kind of like a million of these faces become a society called the UNIA. And as we interact with other societies, whether that's the government of Georgia, government of the United States, a business, the LGBT group, other nations, whatever it may be, they are different societies. And we as a UNIA, the way we interact with them is through lesson 9, diplomacy. So any questions, comments? Is that water? Okay. And we've gone through a lesson on economy, which is, our responsibility to be fiscally responsible as leaders. And tonight we're going over a very, 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 very important questions on the lesson on man. So I'm glad I had to do that review before we get into lesson 11. And again, as Garvey told us in the beginning, the value of knowledge is to use it. That's one thing that I want everyone to understand is this course is a course of leadership, but responsibility. When we master this, the first thing that we should be doing, or even on the process of mastery, we should be teaching this stuff. It's no point in us keeping all of this stuff and taking it with us. All right. Well, number one, any questions, comments before we get started? Thank you. All right, number one, why must man be regarded as dangerous?
Because by nature, man is rebellious.
By nature, man is rebellious. How do we know that?
Does he spend, I'm trying to think if this is the one where he said how men spend money for just on arms. Maybe not.
Men are what? Vile and lazy. Vile is in there. I've got acts for his own benefit. Let me see, page 2.
Men are wicked.
Men are wicked. But it comes down to the history of man. Again, that's something that we should have got from lesson 1. When we look at the history of man, specifically is something that Garvey tells us. So he's coming back in lesson 11, where we should understand the history of man. And he's saying, basically look at the history of man, and how can you expect anything else? Let's see.
The man shakes your face are his the cause of that this is violence. Know it then is violence.
We can't hear you, late president. Okay. Man, because of his sin, which caused him to fall from his highest state of spiritual cleanliness to the level of a creature who acts for his only satisfaction by the gift of free will, must be regarded as a dangerous creature in life.
Mm-hmm.
So, history of man, scriptures. That's one of the things that we, this lesson, the quote from this lesson, one of the quotes that summarize this lesson: "To be forewarned is to be forearmed." So he's, we're making it point blank, and I love this lesson, actually. I really do. This lesson, the reason why we have this course is because of this lesson. This lesson basically says we have to treat man as vile because that's the way history teaches us that man is. And he also says the only way to counter that is to go through a process of education. So Garvey is really telling us, well, in my mind, what Garvey is telling me is if individuals have not gone through this course with me, then I have to approach them and treat them or approach them a certain way. Next question: what previous lesson talked about calculating for the vices of man? What previous lesson talked about calculating for the vices of man? If y'all had to guess, it's not a test question, I don't think. Character. Yeah, I can see character.
Elocution.
Intelligence.
This is, you already missed it. This is a debate. It's a debatable one. There's no right or wrong. As long as you can argue your position, it's respectable. I've got diplomacy, because again, we talked about morally a man you got to be a scamp, and we have to calculate as a diplomat, it's like a shark, you sharks in the water. You got to expect other people to be sharks. So morally, you have to kind of, be somewhat unrighteous, arguably, in order to get things done. But that's just an opinion question. Next question: Who is man always in conflict with? Was that
himself?
Himself, yes. Himself, good and evil. But again, as I said last week, this week is where we talk about what we're up against. This is where we unmask our enemy. And it just so happens that it is ourselves, and it is evil, innate evil within man. 4 examples of wicked man. Examples of the wickedness of man. What are some examples of the wickedness of man that Garvey speaks of?
There was one lesson where he talked about Cain and Abel. I don't know if it's this one.
Yes.
And he talks about how we've manufactured, killing weapons. And I think he said, like, from Cain and Abel to a modern day war he mentioned, but I forgot which one he said.
Yeah. I got the Bible, Cain and Abel. But I mean, again, this is subjective. The history of man, we could say, the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the kamikazes at Pearl Harbor, 9/11, any of these school shootings, and again, as I said, the atrocities of history. I know there's other things, the slaughter of the Congo. Millions of our people were killed in the Congo. The Ma'afa itself. So several examples of the wickedness of man, but we just have to come to grips with the fact that men are not, as Garvey sees it, men are not naturally angels. That's the sentiment of where we're going. Until we know a man personally, what should we regard him as?
Wicked.
Wicked?
Wicked, yes.
What the word is? Vile. I got vile on page 23. Oh, 93. I said 23. Therefore, do not completely trust him, but watch him. When he is good, try to keep him good, although he may not always remain good. If he is bad, avoid him. If you have no business with him to the extent of being too much in his company, always try to reform him and use good influence on him, because the hope of life is to produce a better man. The passion of man is in evidence everywhere. It revolts against affection, kindness, and even love when it has a personal object to attain. That's not what I was looking for. Heard of children murdering parents. That's the wickedness of man. Heard of wives killing their husbands. That's the wickedness of man. Man, therefore, is an abstract creature who is vile until we know him personally. So, again, the importance of this course. Garvey gives us permission, and he gives us a directive. And again, Garvey, in the intro, it says that Garvey would have had a less trusting, more cautious approach. So Garvey is saying man, therefore, is an abstract creature who is vile until we know him personally. So again, another one of the importance of this course. We can't expect to know each other until we get to know each other personally. And this course is one of the ways in which we can do that. One of the things I was thinking about today is, in school, sometimes you can have closer relationships with people in school than you do that live in your own house. You can know their, likes and dislikes more than somebody that lives in your own house. But just something to consider, something to think about, not necessarily hard, fast truth. Okay, but yes, man is vile, and we should treat him as such until we know him personally. In dealing with man, what should you trust? When you're dealing with a man, what should you trust about that individual? Dealing with a man, what should you trust?
Trust your own character and your own judgment more than depending absolutely on him.
Yes, and I'm glad Garvey said that. I love Garvey, man. Like, because I was just gonna say that, like, you don't trust nothing. Like, what you mean? Why would I trust? Therefore, in dealing with man, trust your own character and your own judgment more than depending absolutely on his. As Sister Diane said, for the most of the time, his advice to you is wrongly and calculated so as to put you at a disadvantage. So, again, man is wicked, man is vile. Do not trust any man. Trust yourself. Lean upon the history, the your logic, your reasoning, until you get to know these individuals personally. Treat them as vile creatures. These are directives from Garvey. Number 7. What has history shown man to be?
Wicked, evil.
What? I think it's what is history shown man to be? Y'all playing.
Evil, wicked, vile.
Shown him chief murderer or killer.
There we go. Chief murderer or killer, page 94. Attorney Imhotep, can you elaborate? What does Garvey say on that specifically? Is it just strictly history has shown man to be a chief murderer or killer?
Yeah, he has killed more creatures than any other being. He plans his murders, which he may execute on individuals on large groups of men.
Yes, sir. So,
I don't think he was.
Go ahead.
I didn't sense he was. I mean, I think he was talking about men in general, but I think he was kind of alluding to the man that has been responsible for the atrocities and things that has happened throughout history.
I understand you want to, you want to put. We don't want this to be ourselves. However, as I've said before, and as we should know, lesson 1 teaches us to understand history and history of man, as well as the Bible. When we look at the Bible, the disagreement between Cain and Abel had nothing to do with white people. There weren't any white people on the earth.
Did I say white people? Just kidding.
Well, Europeans, whatever, these are 2 melanated brothers, and one was wicked and vile and expressed evil to the other. There are several examples in the text of us as melanated people being unrighteous and evil to one another. So I understand, and I've heard that before. He's talking about a certain type of man. but in my understanding, he's speaking on man in general. Last example I'll give is the children of Israel. One of their famous stories involves Joseph, one of the sons of Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, and Jacob.
Stealing the birthright.
Yeah, yes, they were trying to steal his birthright, but his brothers, the first agreement that they made was to kill him, and then the second agreement that they made was to sell him into slavery. But both of those decisions and the timeline of what took place had nothing to do with Caucasians or Europeans. These were melanated people that expressed
rebellion.
Yes.
And evil.
Yes, exactly. So while the Caucasian has a modern record of being a chief killer in the world, Garvey could have easily put the word white or black or African or European in front of man. He did not do that. And he asked us to refer to history. And if we take the credit for, the first civilizers of the world, the first mathematicians of the world, the first musicians of the world, we have to also take credit for the first murderers and killers and rapists of the world as well. Unfortunately, but man, this is man in general. It's not. This is my takeaway. Questions? Okay. So yeah, we should have an understanding of what to expect with man with these first 7 questions. And as we all know, these are not my opinions. These are, in order to get these questions, we're going directly to the text and reading what Garvey says. So Garvey says that man is a chief murderer. Garvey says that we should trust ourselves when dealing with other people. Garvey says that we should treat people as vile until we know them personally. Next question, what 2 things should coincide? So this is when we're starting to be able to trust people and develop friendships. What 2 things should coincide before we trust a man? What 2 things should occur at the same time? If we don't know what coincide is, but
knowing and believing that you can trust somebody.
Knowing and believing that you can trust them. You should know and believe that you can trust them before you trust them. Anyone else? Knowing and believing. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. That's a good one. What 2 things should we see from an individual that happen at the same time before we trust that individual? Leadership and good character. Got to go to book. Go to book. So we're getting into being able to trust people. History of the world shows man chief murderer, vile. Your own character, your own judgment. No, that was earlier. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. Let me see. Is it here? Therefore, contemplate state of mind. Yeah. What is the answer to this one? Let's see, what is the answer? Let me remember what the answer is before. Yeah, I know what it is. What two things should a person display before you trust them? What two things? Yeah, there it is. Coincides. When his conduct coincides with what he states. So words and actions. When an individual's words, when an individual's actions matches their words, that's when you can start to trust them. But Garvey says, to elaborate a little bit, if you prize your own good fortune, never pledge it on the first approach of any man, but follow him. If you prize your own good fortune, never pledge it on the first approach of any man. So if you got money to bet on somebody or an individual or their reputation, don't bet it when you first meet that person. Follow that person, investigate that person. And when that person's conduct, when their actions coincide with what they state, when their actions coincide with their words and what they promise you, and what he promises you may take the chance of trusting and when his conduct coincides with what he states, and okay, when his conduct coincides with what he states and what he promises you, take the chance of trusting him just so far. So statements and promises are cool, but actions to match statements and promises, that's where we can start to trust individuals, according to Garvey. Questions, comments? More unhappy relationships between man and happy relationships simply because the evil mind of man cannot keep good always. But as I said, we should get a general sense of Garvey's take on man and his recommendations on man. Number 9. All right, just a couple questions. In regards to man, what is our mission and how do we accomplish our mission? What is our what is our mission when it comes to man, and how do we accomplish said mission as Garveyites, as leaders of the UNIA? We know that man is vile, man is wicked, we should not trust him, but we do have the aim of building a universal confraternity. We as leaders are representatives of our people, and as Garvey said, we should not fear our people. So in regards to man, what is our mission and how do we accomplish that?
We can convert them through education.
Convert them through education. That sounds right. Convert them to what?
Okay. Always let your mission be to make man good. Therefore, talk to man always from the loftiest pinnacle.
That's it. Okay. Make man good. Talk to him from the loftiest pinnacle. In regards to talking to man from the loftiest pinnacle, where can we get? What lessons can we build from to talk to man from the loftiest pinnacle?
All the lessons in this course.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Elocution, but definitely intelligence, definitely leadership, aims and objects. Elocution, it'd probably be towards the bottom, but yeah. God, our eternal cycle, Christ, or the example of divinity, character, social system could probably be down there as well. But yes. So again, we have to have a arsenal as we go out to deal with our people. One is being prepared to deal with our people. To be forewarned is to be forearmed. But once we are warned and armed, we still have work to do. And how do we do that? And our mission is to make man good, is to redeem man from the fallen state of evil to the divine state of good, to help men and women realize our purpose as God's children, as the protectors of this world. And we make men good by speaking to him from the loftiest pinnacles or from these types of principles. You know, God did not make us to be slaves and servants. And for us to do that is a disrespect to God and his intelligence, his or her intelligence. Questions, comments? All right, but yes, that's our mission. Very important. That's a big takeaway. This is part of the reason why we're reading this text, is so that we can understand what to do, what our job is. So our mission is to make man good. Very, very important takeaway in this lesson, and it builds from all of the previous lessons. Next question: what is the present system of education calculated for?
For the benefit of the people who teach, who's given the education.
Benefit of the people given the education, and what else?
To subjugate the majority and elevate the minority.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So according to Garvey, the present system of education is built to subjugate the majority and elevate the minority. So as we talked about societies, systems, classes, basically, our education system teaches our people that a certain class or position or level of career is right for them, is what they should aspire for. You should be a basketball player. You should be a football player. But when it comes to, political leadership or community leadership, or, business leadership, we don't get that same level of promotion. We are more so pushed to positions of service, rather than positions of leadership. But as we should know, education is extremely important. That teaches individuals a part of what their purpose is and where they fit in the society. So it's due to education. Questions, comments? Okay, number 11, in regards to our enemies, what should we profess and what should we give them? And I feel like we've asked this question in a previous lesson. This is not the right question. That's not the right question. Here. What is the benefit of being a part of a fraternity? Brother Andrew, you got some static coming through. What is the benefit of being part of a fraternity, according to Mr. Garvey?
Such fraternity.
Go ahead, sister.
I think Brother Emotep started. That's okay.
All right, y'all fighting for the answers. Come on.
Okay, such fraternities generally enjoy the privilege of special instructions and special discussions, which convey a wider range of enlightenment on the subjects taught than would be possible to the Negro.
Absolutely. So again, when we were talking about Jews and racial education, we were talking about a special education. We talked about, I think that was in this chapter. Was it in this chapter? No, I want in this chapter. I hope it won't in this chapter. Yeah, it is in this chapter. Later on, we'll talk about the difference between education between the Jews and the Gentiles. But just understand that there are groups out there that are creating their own special societies. Greeks, whatever that, whatever they want to be and act like or whatever. This course is our fraternity. This is our confraternity. This is the rites of passage to our confraternity. So we're not Greek. We don't, profess any Greek allegiance. We are African, and not only are we African, we profess to take responsibility for our global race. But fraternities have a special education. That's the point of that question. Any questions or comments?
Right. We have our right to our own fraternity, so to speak. We're not Greeks, we're not Jews, we're not KKKs, we're not all the other organization that exist out there. And we have a right to our own. No, unapologetically.
Yeah, we have to, as we're doing now, develop that special education for the benefit of our people. So in addition to going to, our normal schools, we have to have our after school Garvey programs. Number 12, what is the best way to educate or re-educate the Negro after he has been indoctrinated by the current education system? What is the best way to re-educate the Negro after he has been indoctrinated by the current education system?
Educate him racially in the home, meeting hall, or his own club.
What page is that on?
97.
Baptize him in Garveyism.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Therefore, it is necessary for the Negro to be additionally educated or re-educated after he has imbibed the present system of education. The best way to do this is to educate him racially in the home, meeting hall, or his own club. So meeting hall / club, that's what we're doing now, where he will be put under the closest scrutiny analysis of what appears to be education, as coming from other people, because their system of education does not completely fit the Negro's idea of his own preservation. So again, whether we want to call it a fraternity or institution or club, the point is, as Garveyites, we must understand that our people are under siege, and we are behind enemy lines. And no matter what, our people are going to be indoctrinated into that system. So the best thing that we can do is to build our own systems to help to counter their systems. Again, the models that Garvey give is the Jewish race. But while they go to school with us, from K through 12, they have after school Jewish programs. So while they're learning everything that we learn, in civics class and math class, they get an additional education on Jewish culture and on Jewish finances that we don't get. On management of businesses that we don't get. So we have to develop that for our people. That is exactly what this course is. That's what it's professing, and it's what it's training us to do. So questions, comments? Very important, as I said, very important lesson. This is the right thing. Yeah,
and that's what Brother Umar is doing with his Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy.
True. Yes, that is true. That is true. And that's what I'm saying, that the principles are hard to argue with. It's the personality that people want to focus on. But we're not taught to follow personality, we follow the principles. 13, why have educated Negroes been unable to assume leadership of their race? We have plenty of educated Negroes amongst us in our society. Why have they not been able, or in our communities? I won't say society. Society is something that we're creating as we speak. The individuals, the officers of the UNIA is our society. But why haven't educated Negroes in our community been able to assume leadership of the race?
Because their education was of the nature to cause them to support the present system, which is of no advantage to the Negro.
Yes. So basically, building on the previous question, the fact that we don't have societies, the fact that we don't have institutions for our particular racial benefit, it implies that any leader that is developed that looks like us, one, either has no additional training, or two, their additional training came from sources outside of us. So the fact that we haven't been able to develop our own leaders within our own societies for our own purpose and benefit, it leads educated Negroes have not been able to assume proper leadership of their race because their education was of a nature to cause them to support the present system, which is of no advantage to the Negro, except as a servant, serf, or slave, of which purpose really the system was devised. So, Obama gets a lot of criticism. First Black president, but did we really put him in office, and was he really in office for us? And at the end of the day, what did we as Black people benefit collectively, from his service? And if we're honest with ourselves, we will, come to the conclusion that he was put in power by others, not by us, and he served those that put him in power, and it's that simple. Questions, comments on education and education of our quote unquote leaders?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. Unfortunately, he was put in power to serve the purpose of others, and some of the agendas that he focused on weren't really in the interest of Black people.
Yeah.
They used him to take out Gaddafi.
Yep. Yeah. I love Obama. When he was running for office, I was in college, and I remember just staying up late watching the debates and everything. And I had never been so involved in politics, but just the thought of, as we always said, someone that looks like me, being able to hold that office was something that you can't pass up, and you can't. There's no way, as a conscious Black individual, that you would just let that moment pass you. So that was my political awakening. Supporting Obama, like I said, I still love him, but also realizing the responsibilities and the relationships that come along with that. And he's only one person at the end of the day. He still has a Senate and a House of Representatives, to work with. So, but that's a whole nother thing. Any other questions so far before we move to next question? Okay. So after reading all of this stuff about man and about, leadership and the lack of leadership, 14, how do we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life? How do we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life?
It's by education that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities.
Yes. Education. So Again, the importance of this course. I know it's beating a dead horse. It should feel like beating a dead horse at least. But I'm going to keep repeating this as much as Garvey did and laid down an expectation of well, I guess a foundation of expectation. If we don't go through this course together, if we don't talk, if we don't have a level of understanding and agreement, or disagreement, but just a level of understanding of each other, we have to, I treat the individual as vile. I treat them as wild creatures. They have not gone through the course of African philosophy. I don't know their opinion. I don't know if they even know the course of African philosophy. So the best way for us to resolve these issues is to educate. It is by education that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life. If one is badly educated, he must naturally fail in the proper assumption and practice of his duties and responsibilities. The Negro fails in the proper assumption of his duties and responsibilities because he has been badly educated. He has universally failed to measure up to his duties and responsibility as a man and as a race. His education has been subversive. He must now make his education practical and real. Hence, he must rearrange everything that affects him in his education to be of assistance to him in reaching out to his responsibilities and duties. So, objective number 9. Well, actually, it's number 8 now because we only got 10 aims and objectives. States that we have a responsibility to build universities, institutions for the purpose of educating our people. And that's what this is about. If we're not doing this, if we're not pursuing this, if we're not studying this, if we're not promoting this, I really question what we're doing as quote unquote leaders of the UNIA. I question what are we promoting? What are we putting of more significance, of more importance than the course of African philosophy? And the only thing that should answer that question is the Constitution. So if we're not studying the Constitution, we should be studying the course of African philosophy. If we're not studying the course of African philosophy, we should be studying the Constitution. If we're not studying and promoting either of those two, I'm calling you out as illegitimate Garveyites. That's my opinion. So, yeah, there's no way we should be. I love race first. I love philosophies and opinions. I love selected writings and speeches. But there's no way we should be promoting those books over the Constitution, over philosophies and opinions. So we have to take this serious, understand that we have an obligation to not only educate, but to develop educational institutions and educational systems. We have a very large task. We are hundreds of years, behind schedule. We need to get going, so very, 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 very important statements and why we are focusing so much on this course. Number 15, if a man will rob you of your wages, what else will he rob you of? If a man will rob you of your wages, what else will he rob you of?
Your education.
What kind of education?
That would get you the wages.
Say again? The education that will get you.
If he will rob you of your wages, he will also rob you of your education that will enable you to know that he has robbed you of your wages.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for. Just further emphasizing the system that we're in, further identifying why we're in the situation that we're in, and just putting our face in the feces, so to speak. You know, like we know we've made a mistake. We see it, and we keep trying to ignore it or act like we don't know what's going on. So Garvey's basically telling us, you know, the man that will rob you of your wages will also rob you of the education to let you know that he's robbing you of your wages. You know, we're still complaining about being robbed of our wages, and we haven't addressed a alternative education that will allow us to know, you know, what's going on and why it's happening. So, questions, comments? Okay, number 16, what is the particular education reserved for those who want to gain an advantage? The particular education for those who want to gain an advantage.
Common education, civic education, political and social. Oh, civic education, political and social. Is 98.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, those who look like you and are related to you ought to be ought to be known first before you know others. There may be good grounds for common education of all groups in a community. So common education that we all learn, no matter what our race is, we all live in a certain proximity. So we should all have a common education. We should all, you know, have the same civic education. I don't think political, social well, I guess you could learn historical, political, uh, politics historically, social education historically, but this detailed education that teaches man how to live to the highest and enjoy the best is particular education. And that particular education is always reserved for those who want to gain an advantage. So, again, just reinforcing what we've already discussed thus far. If we are amongst this society, we are integrated. Our children are getting a common education. We have to also provide a particular education. So that's what that's about. And last question. Darn, any questions? Last question. What is the difference between the Jews' education and the Gentile education? What does Garvey say about the Jews' education and the Gentiles' education?
I think it's what we touched on earlier, that even though there's common education, you know, the others have their own education, whether it's after school, on the weekends, what have you.
Absolutely. Anyone want to add to that before I go to the text? Absolutely, Sister Diane. We have two groups of people. They're both receiving the same general education, but then one of those groups goes off and gets a particular education. When it's time for those, and that process takes place over years, you know. So after 10, 15 years, we sit and we wonder why our children are not as prepared, or you know, as others. They've gone through a particular specific education for years, and they're years ahead of our children in those aspects. But Garvey says, by view of the fact that the Jew gets a dual education, the education of the state and the education of his race, he is always in a unique position to worsen or better his compatriots of another race in the community. He is always making more out of everything than the Gentile because he knows all about the Gentile while the Gentile knows nothing about him. So we have to create our own education, a private education that our children know and no one else knows. And it gives them a position of advantage in regards to benefiting our race. So questions, comments? Like I said, very important lesson. I want to take our time. But this lesson is a major part of why we are going through this course. Until we do something like this, until we develop something like this, until we have a rites of passage, then I treat men as Garvey recommends. I treat them as vile. I treat them as, uneducated. I don't trust them. So, we should be inviting individuals to these groups, to these meetings, to these classes. When other groups are having these classes, we should be openly attending so that we can get to know each other. But Garvey puts it out there. He says, until we go through a process like this, there's a certain way we should expect the other one to behave based on the education of man. And that's the lesson 11, man. With that, we will go to lesson 12. Lady President, will you be reading? Okay. You coming over here?
Yes.
Scroll it down on the thing though.
All right, y'all. Lesson 12, the purpose of institutions. Lord have mercy. Organized society is always a mass of people, and as such, cannot do anything explicit or by detail by themselves. Hence, the organizing of institutions to do the particular work that cannot be done by the masses as a whole. There are different kinds of institutions in the society, but each institution has its particular function, whether it be the church, college, or university, school, hospital, academy, chamber of commerce, fraternity, trade union, literary club, sports club, athletic club, gymnasium, YMCA or YWCA, etc. It is our present civilization, in our present civilization, no society would be considered functioning properly if such institutions did not exist. Therefore, it is necessary for the Negro to pay close attention to developing the appreciation for institutional life. It is not necessary or binding that he copies completely the systems, methods, or manners in these institutions, except in so far as they will go to help him to promote a higher life and accomplishing the most out of this organized society. It is incumbent upon him that he also have and control his own institutions based upon his own cultural and civilized idealism. As for instance, he may have his own church, but it is not necessary for him to adopt the peculiar articles of faith of the churches or of alien races. He is not a Hebrew, therefore he would not adopt the Hebrew faith. He is not by origin a Roman Catholic, nor Anglican, because of these faiths or religions were founded by white men with an idea of their own. In his religious In his religious philosophy, the Negro may safely adopt articles of faith to link him to the Godhead of the Christian faith. And practice such as his particular religion, and so likewise with all other institutions. His universities, colleges, and schools may engage in the same process of education, but with an adopted curriculum necessary for the special benefit of the Negro. His clubs, academies, and unions should be modeled in the same way, with the absolute objective of attaining the end that is particularly desired by the race. The Negro should never completely surrender himself to the institutional life of other people. Otherwise, he will not be original, but purely and merely a copyist. If this could be appreciated, it shows or reveals the wide field which have remained untouched for Negro organization and Negro activity. It is through the institutions of a race that the civilization, it is through the institutions of a race that the civilization and culture of the race are built. The Negro should occupy himself in cultivating his own culture and ultimately achieving his own civilized ends, so that in the comparison of racial achievements, he may be able to stand out distinctly on those achievements on his own account as others may do. To live in the achievement of others is to really admit the superiority of others and the inferiority of self. As a fact, it is by such comparisons that the Negro is judged as an inferior being. Nothing that is handed to the Negro by somebody else should be sufficiently satisfactory to the Negro. He should seek to surround it with originality and then claim it as his own. He is justified in remodeling and reshaping the things to suit himself, because there is nothing new under the sun. Whatever people have, whatever other people have. The Negro is the father of civilization. He constructed the first government in Africa and thereby taught others the way. Always seek to improve on whatever you see fit to adopt. Never leave it at where you adopt it, because somebody else will claim it and prove their right to it. When you have added to it or taken away from it, you can prove that it is not the same thing. Therefore, it is yours. Always carefully and thoroughly investigate the accomplishments of other races. Try to improve and beat them at those achievements, and keep your achievements a secret from them. Never open up the facts of your achievements to others, because they are too anxious to get the last word on anything that is worthwhile. Always hide the secrets of your achievements while demonstrating those achievements. It must be like a chemist selling his preparation or demonstrating it without giving away his formula, because the moment he does so, there will be many similar preparations on the market. Each institution of a people has its special objects to attain and may not fit in with the idealism of other peoples. So the Negro should have his own. He is not to be a slave to other people's idealism. In some detail or other, each people's institutions must differ from yours according to their particular idealism. The Jew could never be a Negro in his institutional line, nor an Anglo-Saxon, a Latin, nor a Latin, a Teuton, nor neither a Negro. Therefore, a Negro must not try to be either, but in his institutional line be himself. Like the Jew whom nature made a Jew for a particular purpose, therefore he must be different both in his habits, in his way of living, and in his idealism. All people have a separate and distinct functions, and they should keep those functions. The archangels in heaven have their functions. The cherubims have theirs, and the seraphims have theirs. And so with humanity. Following God and heaven's example, there is no reason why the Negro should not have his. And when he doesn't, he is not living the proper life in accordance with the purpose from which nature made him. Your entire physiognomy is different from other people's. Your hair is woolly, your nose is broad, your lips are thick, and so this difference must also be intended in your outlook and in your viewpoint on life. Anyone who tells you the contrary is a liar and a fraud. In fact, an enemy to you and to nature. In this human world of confusion, never let anyone tell you that although of different races, you are one. If you were one, God would have made you so, because he is not a deceiver. The Ethiopian is spoken of as being different. Even in the scripture, it is said that he cannot change his skin. Think what that means. It is fair assumption that others may change their skins, but not the Ethiopian, who is the Negro, the Black man. So there must be something permanent and lasting and eternal about the Black man. God knows why he fixes it so. God knows why he fixes it so. God knows why he fixes it so. Don't try to change it by subterfuge, or by inferential fraud. What a grand thing it is to know that while all other things can change, you because of your race cannot change. Tell this to the world. Tell them how lasting you are, and when they doubt it, send them to their Bibles, which yourself never wrote. It emphasizes the greater truth that may be so, because when those who wish otherwise have to acknowledge in this respect of virtue, the Black man evidently was the first man. Adam and Eve were Black. Their two children, Cain and Abel, were Black. When Cain slew Abel and God appeared to ask him for his brother, he was so shocked that he turned white, being the affliction of leprosy. And as such, he became a progenitor of a new race born outside of Dothan. The white man is Cain transformed, hence his career of murder from Cain to Mussolini. It is evident and fair assumption that when Cain ran away and disappeared from the neighborhood of his parents and journeyed afar, he built up a new race, living in the same country but far away. And in the process of time in Africa, where all of this happened, the Negro race through Adam and Eve continued their multiplication. And as it spread itself in the development of civilization, it came suddenly upon the settlement of Cain, and knowing Cain's history of blood, ran the entire race from that neighborhood across the Mediterranean into Europe. The white race of Cain hid in caves for centuries. Therefore, their white skin became fixed because most of the time they were hidden from the light. Hence, the white man as a European. The world. The world is only part of the creation, an atom of universe. It is complete. It is a complete entity of creation in relationship with other entities in the creation. Man is made of mind and matter. Matter is manifested through nature, and mind is the connecting link with the Spirit of God. The highest mind in the world is the mind of man, in that behind it is the Spirit of God, giving the mind free will to act through the soul. The soul is mind as well as the feeling of heart is soul and mind. The explanation of this is as intricate as that of the Trinity, God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. As God rules the universe and all matter and mind, so man through his mind rules the world over which he is Lord. The whole world then belongs to man. Each man should get his appropriate and proportionate share. When in a lifetime he fails to get this, he naturally fails to lift himself up to his lordship. One man's disposition of his lordship enthrones another man's sovereignty over him. Hence, a ruling man and a serving man, a ruling race and a serving race. Never be a race of servers, but a race of sovereigns. Lords, control the world because the world is your province. The world will not yield more than you want it to yield. But if you know the world, you can make the world yield much. Whatever you want, always try to master the world. To master the world, you must know the world. Hence, you must pass out of your own district, county, and country. To know the world, go and possess it. Because all that is in it is yours for the getting. Get out, go out and get it. There is no other rival but your fellow man. Never allow your fellow man to rise higher than you, otherwise he will make you his slave. If you do not use the world well by understanding it, it will destroy you through its matter and through its mind. If you treat the world well by knowing it thoroughly, the world will serve you obediently. Always dispute the right of any man's superiority over you in the world. Fear no other man but God, for God is your superior, but man is always your equal. So as long as you rise to his attainments, so long as you rise to his attainments, you may rise to his attainments through the extraordinary use of your mind. Mind is matter. Mind is king. When it goes wrong, it loses its scepter. It remains right and wields the scepter and sits upon the throne. I will always be on the throne. It's your prerogative. It's your prerogative. It is your right because you are the Lord and master of the earth and all things therein. In going through the world, hold your head and courage high, but you must always remember that you are a man and the ruler of the world. Remember that you rule the world through your mind. Think high, think deeply, think in a way to make you know all around and about you. If you do not know, you will fail. Be sure to know. Knowledge is everywhere. It is hidden. Search for it, and when you discover it and no one else knows about it, keep it and use it for the good of yourself and your race. Your first duty in the world is to yourself, your family, your race, and your racial nation. Then worship God, absolutely, and thank Him for all. If you allow another man to know more than you, he will lead you up to the precipice, and if it suits his purpose, he will let you fail. He will let you fall in. Therefore, know as much as he does, and more, so that he may not lead you blindly. When you have to follow another man because you don't know, you are taking a dangerous risk. He may bury you. He may bury you. He may hide you away to suit his convenience. And therefore, while you walk through the world, always be on guard. Try not to lose your mind. Try not to lose your mental balance. Try not to lose your sense of perception, because in losing these things, you are doomed in the world. There is nothing man cannot know except the divine and almighty mysteries of God. And that is possible to man. Man may know by seeking knowledge that is in the world. All that is possible to man, man may know by seeking knowledge that is in the world. Always try to be self-sufficient in yourself. Where it is impossible, seek that self-sufficiency in your racial relationships, camaraderships, or in your race. Comradeship, or in your race. Always see to it that your race is self-sufficient. That means that everything you want must be obtainable in your race as far as human relations will permit. If you are not individually self-sufficient or cooperative in your racial relations or self-sufficient in your race as a whole, you will have to go outside of yourself for that sufficiency, which will make you absolutely dependent on the goodwill of others for your sufficiency. No one will give away value that is wanted for self, so you will have to serve and become servants or slaves to sufficiency. Never wait on another man's pocketbook. Use your own, because he may never show up. He may die on the way he may die on the way and your wait will be too long. Race first.
Thank you, Lady President. Excellent job.
Race first.
It's 10:03. I didn't have anything. Anybody have any questions, comments?
Great job, Lady President.
You're welcome, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay. There aren't any questions or comments. We are officially halfway through. Let me see. Officially halfway through. We will take a break next week. Spend time with your families next Tuesday, and we will get back together. Let's see, is that the 20? Okay, it's the second. It's the second of next year, January 2nd. So I don't have anything. If nobody
So
has,
we'll see everyone at the Kwanzaa then before our next lesson.
yes, thank you for that reminder. Kwanzaa 26th. Yeah, Kwanzaa is 26th. Next week, Kwanzaa, no study group. Then we'll pick up study group on the 2nd of January.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see. Brother Art, you want to do us the honor, close us out, my brother?
Yes, sir. No problem. Everybody put your right fist in the air and repeat after me. One God.
One God.
One God.
One aim.
One
aim.
One destiny.
One
destiny.
Africa.
Africa.
For the Africans.
For the Africans.
For the Africans.
Those at home.
Those at home.
And those abroad.
And those abroad.
Race first.
Race first.
Race first.
Race first, family. Go in peace.
Go in peace. Thank you.